I couldn't be more excited than to introduce our main stage speaker, Richa Pande. Welcome.
Thank you.
Richa is the global head of ABM for HP. Richa is a marketing leader with nearly 20 years experience in marketing for enterprise organizations. And what I love about Richa is that she is a natural sales ally. Richa drives deep engagement between marketing and sales through what she calls one goal, one plan, one scorecard approach, which we will talk more about. So you are in for a treat. All right, so Richa, welcome.
Thank you.
So interestingly enough, you joined on HP back in 2018 as head of ABM and content strategy. We were fairly early adopters in the world of ABM. And I know 2018 was pretty early on in terms of account-based marketing. There wasn't a lot of talk about it. So ABM really was not so much on the radar screen. So I find it fascinating that your first role in 2018 was actually centered around ABM, which is so cool. So I'd love to understand from you what drove HP to take the leap to really move into ABM, and what role did you play in making that happen?
Sure. First of all, Nicole, thanks for the warm welcome. And I just want to take 30 seconds to applaud the yeoman's job Mojo Media Lab is doing by creating these forums where people can come together, share their expertise. ABM can be a lonely and an expensive journey. So the more peer groups we create and we can learn from each other, the better it is for the whole community, for the whole category. So thank you for creating this forum.
Amazing.
For all of us to congregate. Yes. With regards to your question about starting out with ABM in 2018, you're right. I mean, as a discipline, the formality of the discipline probably came around pretty recently, albeit account-based marketing in some shape or form has been around for a while. It just probably didn't have the formalized structure, the nomenclature, the pomp and circumstance that surrounds it now, maybe a decade ago or so. At HP, the credit of bringing in account-based marketing really goes to our CMO, Vikrant Batra. He's a true visionary and, made the bold bet of investing in ABM for the organization, successfully lobbied with it, in our ELT, our executive leadership team, got the funding, got the vision sold and accepted. So really the credit of us being early adopters really goes to him. And my role when I joined HP in 2018 was to take this high level vision and, work on it and then turn it into something that could be executed at the market level. This meant what are the rules of engagement with our stakeholders, what our organizations would look like, how they would be structured, what skill sets would be needed, and most importantly, what sorts of expectations would be set around ABM, like what does success look like over a period of time. So all those conversations happened in 2018, and when you're doing something for the first time, there are a lot of learning opportunities and things you remember, okay, that worked really well, do more of it. What we call stop, start, continue. There were a lot of things that fell under the stop bucket, but equally, we were very heartened to find out there were also things that fell under the continue bucket. And by working along with communities structured around ABM, we were able to identify things that we should start doing.
That's amazing, Richa. And, I really applaud your leadership for allowing that breathing room to be able to make that happen, because the reality is, there is no proven model with exactly what is going to work, right? So a lot of it is, I'll use the term that we use, which is experiment, and not all experiments work. Right? But the ones that don't, you stop, just as you said,
or refine,
and hopefully learn from it and get stronger over time. So wow, what an incredible challenge though, and very cool. So it sounds like you had almost a blank slate to say, okay, build the team, build the program. What does this look like? Absolutely incredible. So what did your first month then, or first 6 months look like in your role as head of ABM then? How did that play out?
So the thing with ABM is why it can get so complicated or so confusing is it is a multi-limbed organism, right? It is the proverbial octopus, and you can over-index on certain aspects of it, on certain limbs of it, and under-index on certain other critical areas, and you only learn through time, like, oh, shouldn't have done that. So first 6 months, I think we were trying to do a lot of things at the same time, which was build the team, sell the vision across markets. The alignment at the top had happened, and now it was on us to evangelize the vision, give it shape, help people visualize it in their heads, give room to them, to our stakeholders, to be able to contribute to the vision. So it didn't sound like, hey, here's a diktat, this is how things are going to be run from now on. We wanted them to co-create and be co-authors. So I think the first 6 months really went in refining the vision, bringing it to life, selling the vision, building strategic alignment. And then we also, the thing with HP is we're very fortunate that we are, we're staffed very well compared to maybe smaller organizations. So there were a lot of functions that were working shoulder to shoulder to bring this to life. It wasn't just one team that was working towards this goal. We had a data science team, we had a marketing automation and marketing ops team, we had a sales op team. So all teams were doing, were carrying out their responsibilities to further the cause. Always, our job was to make sure we were singing from the same hymnal, staying on point, and moving towards the same goal. So very heady first few days, very exciting, and broke a lot of things, but then also landed on areas where we could have alignment to hit the next milestone.
That's amazing. I applaud you for taking the time necessary to get everybody in the right mindset. And I think that's really important to not rush through. In our experience, the most important aspect of creating a successful ABM program is truly having a mindset shift and all being on the same page with that. And it really is change management, right? You're doing things a different way. And that just takes time. So that's amazing. And especially when you are touching so many different groups who kind of have to all be rowing in the same direction. So that's a great call out to be patient kind of through that and take the time necessary and needed to evangelize the vision is what I heard you say, which I love that, and get everyone on the same page. So I'm sure that, as you said, there were things that were broken along the way, but what were some of the things that you found out that really had to change from an operations standpoint to ensure success with ABM?
I think, as marketers, we can get very enamored by the glitzy stuff. I think like getting caught up in the technology, the MarTech stack. That's the exciting part. Everyone wants to play with new tools. And there's so much technology out in the market. Like everyone claims to, kind of be the cure for everything ABM related. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I had worked with that technology, things would be smoother. So I think if now when I initiate ABM campaigns, I'm very cognizant. I have a rule book, I have a blueprint that I follow, and you kind of have to do the unsexy stuff, right? Like in sports, you have to put in the reps, you have to put in the drills before you can shoot that basket, that before you can have that wow moment in the court. And what that looks like in ABM is you have to put in the grunt work to drive alignment high, wide, and deep in the organization. You have to turn into a selling machine. You have to sell the vision. And I would recommend, like, step one, put in the work to define the vision. And I really emphasize, let it be co-authored, let it be co-created. Don't get greedy about being the star of the ABM show. Don't do that. Don't let your ego drive your decision making. Really work towards putting a plan together that everyone agrees upon, draw on people's experience, even if what they're saying might seem very different from what you personally want to do. Maybe you as a marketer want to try all these new digital tools, but perhaps sales will tell you, you know, that the best thing that we can do is to do more and more trade shows face to face. And you're like, no, I want to do these cool digital things. But listen, really listen, because it's not, the purpose of ABM is not that you get an opportunity to do what you've always wanted to do as a marketer. The purpose of ABM is to deliver predictable revenue and growth for the company. So don't lose sight of that, and use that as a North Star to make the decisions, to be the deciding factor, to be your compass as you decide how to design your ABM strategy.
Well, that's amazing, and that's true collaboration to be able to to come together for a goal. And I love what you said. I mean, one of the a big challenge in ABM is a lack of alignment, particularly between marketing and sales, if you will. And I love what you said in terms of just listen, right? Which is just a great way to open up lines of communication and collaboration, and eventually get to a place that you all feel great about. Because the reality is, again, it's not going to be as successful as it could be, not even by a long shot, if you truly do not have the team environment of marketing and sales. This isn't a siloed operation, right?
Yeah, and building strategic alignment is a lot of work. A lot of work. It's a lot of hours. You have to suspend your ego. You have to accommodate different personalities. All the while, you're just itching to take action. And what can happen is you can get impatient and you can be like, you know what? XYZ are not coming along. I'm just going to move ahead, and the success I have will show them that they should have been on the bandwagon. Okay, but make sure if you do go down that path, make sure you've thought this through, because what you don't want to find is yourself in a situation where the journey requires 100 steps, but at step 37, you realize you can't go any farther without the help of the stakeholders who you were unable to win over or convince or align with. And now you're caught in the middle of something. You can't exit, you can't move forward, and you don't have the partnership with your stakeholders. You're going to find yourself in a pickle. And that's when you're going to start hearing the narrative. Is this working? How do we know when the results will trickle in? It's just going to cascade in the wrong direction. The situation will just cascade towards a wrong outcome, undesirable outcome.
So Richa, though, what would you say to somebody who, a company to where there is the difficulty in getting started, right? There might be hesitancy from a group, and I'd hate for that company to just not move forward with ABM at all. What, maybe advice or anything that you can share with someone to say, maybe here's some tips to try to at least help to get started and not make it so that, oh, well, we don't have complete alignment, so I just can't do this at all.
Yeah, we will encounter those situations, even within a company where at the top, the vision might be sold, but at the actual business unit, you may not get the buy-in. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of sales or the business operations. They are incentivized to hit their revenue targets. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, are you hitting your revenue targets? Where is there an unmet need or an unsatisfied hunger? Okay. And is ABM the best way to satisfy that hunger? So you really have to ask yourself these painful questions, because if ABM cannot satisfy that hunger, you should not be shoving ABM down the organization's throat. But let's say there is the revenue aspirations of all, reality is falling short of the revenue aspirations. You really have to show why the alternative of what you're proposing will help the organization get there faster, with fewer resources, with more predictability. And if you can do that, you are going to see questions. You may still face some opposition, but the nature of the questions will change. The nature of the questions will now change into how will we do this? Yep. Not why should we do this, right? The other thing that you can encounter is, let's say revenue targets are being hit by or are being met by doing spray and pray demand gen approach, okay? And when you suggest, hey, we should also consider ABM, that and X and Y will produce fear, because they're like, okay, we barely landed on something that's working, even though it's painful and is a huge, it eats up a lot of our resources, but at least we know that this usually mostly works. So we can't afford the risk of switching over to another method, right? Or incorporating an additional method, an incremental method. In those scenarios, you really need a tops-down approach. You need a visionary ally. Maybe it's the president of your business unit. Maybe it's the head of your commercial organization. You need them as allies. They need to believe in the cause to drive that down further, and to assure people that, like you mentioned, it's an experiment and it is okay for us to do some risk taking here. And this is what risk looks like. Where people get all anxious is they feel that they have to embrace a new approach and deliver their quarterly results starting from quarter one. And that's when you get people knotted with worry and get very obstinate, because let's face it, basically you're saying, hey, let's gamble with your paycheck this quarter and see what our odds are. And why aren't you excited about that? Mm-hmm. You have to remember, what are you asking the other person to do? You're saying, chances are your paycheck will be big, or chances are your paycheck might be less than in last quarter, but hopefully you're okay with it.
A couple things I want to ask. I love that. A couple things I just want to pull out that you said that I think are super impactful. Number one, I love the fact that it's, you're thinking from a standpoint of the other person, right? And thinking, where is your pain point, right? And addressing their pain point instead of trying to convince them why this is a great idea, like meet them where they are. But one of the things you said that I think is really important to bring out is compensation. I've seen this happen a lot, to where if your compensation structures for different roles in the organization are not aligned to be able to help with a successful program, I mean, it's just going to be an uphill battle. So
you have to share the risk. You have to share the risk.
You have to share the risk. And so from a leadership perspective, I think that's a really important, thing to notate, that when we're talking about mindset and alignment, it's aligning all of those things, right? People, process, compensation, just the strategies. And compensation is a real big one, because at the end of the day, when you've got people who are relying on that money, they're going to do what it takes to meet that. So don't forget about that aspect.
Yeah, so really the way to link that is you can't have disjointed things because today you decided we're going to do ABM, right? Yeah. So start with your business objectives that determine your marketing strategy, that determine your marketing KPIs. And then logically that should be feeding into your team's annual business objectives, right? What they get measured on, how they get bonused, or whatever the compensation structure looks like. It all has to be linked logically so that there are fewer disruptions to the chain. If you don't have a chain, I mean, even the coincidence of hitting bullseye it's not going to happen. I mean, there will be no coincidence. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that's really great. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced from just an organizational perspective as you rolled out ABM? What were some of the things that you thought, oh, wow, okay, didn't see that coming, and that was hard to overcome?
I think initially, well, I mean, I'll speak in terms of larger, I've worked both at very large organizations and also at very small outfits. And I can share with you what is the scenario we run into in both those formats. In larger organizations, building strategic alignment and the number of groups you have to build the strategic alignment with is always more than even your biggest estimate, right? You might say, okay, it's going to take me X amounts of effort. Let me just add 15% more on top of it. It's actually always going to surprise you how much more effort it requires and how frequently you have to do it. So I always educate my team, like whenever we're interfacing with sales or with our business operations team or with senior management, we follow the mantra, always be selling. It's always an opportunity to provide a refresher on why we're doing what we're doing without, I mean, obviously you have to see the audience and you
Sure.
have to seize your moment. I also encourage my team, get your spiel down, because the most pivotal conversations that you have are the proverbial water cooler convos. Those are the ones that people remember more than a formal presentation. So when you are having these so-called water cooler meetings, do you have your spiel down that you can help educate someone else on what marketing is doing? Don't lose that opportunity. But that means you need to have your elevator pitch down. In smaller organizations, it really just boils down to who is going to do the work, how much is it going to cost, how will you justify the investment? So it's more like, okay, if you're in a smaller organization and you say, this is how we will do ABM, the insights group will give me this, the data science group will give me that, the marketing ops group will give me that. I think a lot of folks from smaller companies will empathize with me when I say, the president will look at you and say, that's a great idea. Those are you. That's one person, and that's you. If you want to do this, you're on your own. Make it happen, right? So in that situation, I think the key is to keep things extremely simple that can be executed. Don't get married to a textbook version of how ABM should play out.
I love your suggestion to always be selling, and I
learned it from salespeople, right?
I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and always be educating. So it's look for the opportunities in which you have to remind, to continue to promote, to evangelize this, and it does take time. And unfortunately, it does take a lot of communication and ongoing as we go. So that's a really, really great tip. So in the intro, I had said that your approach is one goal, one plan, one scorecard. So I would love for you to take some time to describe, which, by the way, I love the fact that you actually have that, in the 3 words. It's very memorable. So if you could describe what that means and how you came to that.
The credit of that wonderful phrase goes to my good friend Sangram Vajre, who I jokingly say is the father of ABM, but really, I mean, he's done a phenomenal job in evangelizing for the category, like amazing, amazing work. Basically, what that means is being aligned on the goal, right? Like one goal, one plan, one scorecard is basically objective strategy, tactics, and metrics, right? One thing that I would like to share is, when we do ABM, we have to remember, again, that the business unit's goal is to hit on its sellout or revenue targets, gross margin targets. Their objective is not to try ABM, okay? If it's like something else that helps them get there, they'll be open to that strategy. So I think it's very important when we look at business objectives that we don't say, okay, we're only, you know what, we're bringing in ABM. It's a new initiative. It's going to take a lot. So we're just going to focus on ABM. And the other things that marketing needs to do, those are distractions. Please don't bother us. You will not last long.
Yeah.
And you'll be highly unpopular if you take that approach. So what you have to do is, let's say you have a target of hitting X million dollars in revenue. You have to identify what are your sources of revenue and what is the strategy that you align to get that revenue. So if you're going to get 50% of your revenue through channel partners, you might need to do targeted demand gen, or you might need to do a very agile content strategy to support them. If 15% of your revenue is signed up through ABM, then keep it very focused. If the remaining 35% has to be done targeted demand gen through direct sales, then make sure that is in place. Don't just focus on one strategy, first of all. And have the handshake. We actually write up a document which serves as a contract with the business, where we say, this is our business objective as an organization. These are the areas where marketing will play, and these are the areas we will not play. And that is actually the most critical section in our contract, is where we will not be playing. Okay. Yeah. And then the next thing that you need to do is align on KPIs. So just for ABM, align on what are your, don't just align on pipe and wins. Of course, those are the obvious ones. But ABM, it can depend on where you are at as an organization. That will drive what your KPIs should be. If you're going after a new vertical, or if you're going after a different buyer persona, your initial KPIs will be more relationship oriented. So make sure you take credit for that, because if you're going to a new vertical for the first time, probably for a quarter and a half, you're not going to be filling up the pipe like crazy. You're going to first have to build relationships. So make sure you convert these intangibles into tangibles against which you can show your progress.
Yeah.
So we have 3 metrics: relationship, revenue, and reputation. And then we have short, mid, and long-term goals for each of those 3 pillars to provide a more holistic view of marketing's contribution. So that's how we do our one goal, one plan, one scorecard strategy.
I love that. And I love that you said that ABM really shouldn't be your only strategy, but definitely don't try to force it to make it your only strategy. Right. Account-based marketing is a very effective B2B strategy, but it's not necessarily meant to, to play in its own.
It's not going to give you scale. It's not going to give you scale.
Exactly. And then the one goal, one plan, one scorecard, that's also, I look at like a progression. Let's get to that point. But what I love that what you said is we're going to track on how that we can showcase we're making progress. So at least if you're, if you're moving in the right direction, you can say, okay, we're where we thought we were going to be. So let's keep going. That's positive. That's a great thing to keep the momentum going in the program. And you will eventually get to the point of having those, revenue in the pipeline and closed won deals. But you're right. We first need to do a lot of things beforehand to create relationships through engagement of accounts and things of that nature. So that's awesome. And I want to remind everybody that we're going to have a Q&A section at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free and drop them in the question box. I'm saying that now because we'll start that in a few minutes. Okay, so I've heard you talk, and if I'm listening, I'm going, oh, this is hard. I don't know. Should I even try to get started? So I'd love to be able to hear from you. What have been some of the notable successes? What would you say, to marketers to encourage them to go through and, that change management and alignment efforts to be able to, fully embrace ABM?
I would say that, yes, ABM can get very complicated if you want to make it complicated. You can also do something very contained. If you're, I would actually recommend, if as an organization you're embarking upon ABM, if these are your first few attempts, my recommendation would be maybe start with a few one-to-one accounts. Cut your teeth on that. Use that as an opportunity to understand how does the sales cycle in your organization work. You're going to find, especially if you're in a large organization, you're going to find that there's so many different groups you may not even have known about that touch an account. So it's a wonderful opportunity to understand a sales cycle. You also learn how to drive alignment on a daily basis with different groups who are going to be very important stakeholders, very important contributors to the success of the program. It will give you unprecedented access to the customer. I mean, let's face it, even though we say in B2B marketing is very close to the customers, we're not there till the end of the cycle. But when you do one-to-one, you will have opportunities to be engaged at very, in deep stages of the selling process. So that's a great place to start. Notable wins, I would say, the ones that really were game-changing for us were, one was, at HP, we decided that we didn't want to be locked in a game of features and pricing where a competition was focused and get locked into, like comparison of features and how much you get per dollar or whatever. We didn't want to play that game. We wanted to elevate ourselves to the C-suite. Instead of working with procurement, we wanted to elevate the conversation at the C-suite level, and we wanted to demonstrate how HP can help. This was in healthcare, how HP can help healthcare organizations deliver on their outcomes for their customers by working with HP. It was a whole different conversation. We had some amazing innovation that helped us demonstrate and kind of prove out the reasons to believe for a value proposition. But we were talking to a different persona and a very powerful persona in healthcare, which are the clinicians. They hold the keys to the kingdom. And, we didn't have prior deep relationships with that persona in our accounts and in our target account list. So our goal as marketing was to crack those doors open and create meaningful opportunities where we could engage with that persona. So that was very critical because that was foundational to then take the conversation further to saying, okay, let's do business. So that, I think, was a very notable pivot in which marketing made a massive contribution. The other places where we made contribution was being able, so HP invests a lot in cybersecurity. It was, again, to engage with Chief Information Security Officers, CISOs, in our target accounts and leverage them to drive a conversation for account penetration and oust competition. In this case, it was a direct impact to revenue, so we were contributing to pipe and to wins. So those are like some notable examples that come to mind immediately.
Yeah, that's excellent. A couple of things that I want to pull out that you said. First of all, for everybody listening, do you see how Richa is talking like a salesperson? Like you understand a salesperson. You've heard you say sales process. I learned this from talking to sales. This is such that is just a proof positive that there's true alignment because, you get it. And I think that's incredibly important to make sure that you really understand what it's like for salespeople, because at the end of the day, you're now a soccer team, right? This isn't the relay race where you're handing off the baton and you're done, right? And it's the next person. You're working as a soccer team, in order to reach that goal. So that's really amazing. Yes, alignment is everything. I see a comment there, 100%. So I love that. Okay, I know we are almost at time, so we will open up for questions. So feel free and put in the Q&A box any questions that you might have. Okay, so what advice would you give other marketing leaders who are struggling with achieving marketing and sales alignment when implementing ABM?
I would say, first of all, take some lessons in negotiation and selling, because that's what you have to do. You have to sell to people who make a living selling. So, better get really good at it. Learn to negotiate for your team. And I really mean it. I mean, I'm not being cheeky here. I think marketers need to master the art of negotiation. And you have to know how to negotiate internally to sell your idea. I would also say, again, like I mentioned, find out where the pain points are. Make it, you have to frame the solution as, here is a pain point that is impacting you. Here is a possible solution. If we go to someone and we say, hey, you know what, this is the year of ABM, we're gonna, we should really consider ABM, you're not gonna win them over. But if you say, hey, look, we've received a 30% increase in our sales target, yet our head count and our budgets are the same, we've got to make our dollars and our head count stretch more. How are we gonna do that? Let's brainstorm some options. I would even suggest, like, don't use jargon, because every sales leader intuitively understands account-based marketing. Guide them gently so that they arrive at the conclusion that you have to do ABM, and let them say, we were the ones who suggested we're going to do ABM. And that's okay. It doesn't matter who suggests it. Let them say, it's even better if the sales leader says, we got to do account-based approach. Sure, yeah, let me bring your vision to life. So really guide it from their perspective. If you focus it on how we're going to deliver revenue and how this is a way to deliver revenue, people will listen.
I love that. Learn negotiation. That is an excellent tip. Okay, I think we'll have time for one last question. So this question is, within my organization, I've heard this before as well. Lots of people have ideas of what ABM is, but they're varying different definitions of what account-based marketing is. And I'm trying to sell this into my organization. So how would you define account-based marketing, and any tips for kind of selling that in?
So I think the critical difference between targeted demand gen and account-based marketing is account-based marketing, the giveaway is the first word, account. So it really has to be immersed and based in customer obsession. It's not about what are all the stuff that I can sell into an account. It is, what is the account's pain point? Where are they at right now? Where we can help them. That's a very critical approach, and you can't do it if you are trying to target 100 accounts in one go. You probably can't do it beyond 15, 20 accounts if you're doing it properly, if you have a large team. Demand gen in turn is pursuit led. So demand gen is volume and scale, ABM is focus. And you should only do it with accounts that are marquee accounts or large accounts, or where you can't crack the account open. You want to open the door and get in, or you want to do land and expand. Again, with regards to selling the strategy in your organization, two things: make it about results, make it about the business outcomes, and then second, make sure that if the organization needs help with 5 things, you're not just focusing on one thing, which is ABM. Make sure you're saying, okay, I can do X amount of ABM, and here's how I'm going to support you in the other 4 things. Because if you're not supporting in the other 4 things, and you just focus on ABM, there will be constant distractions from the organization saying, I also need your help here. Hey, you can't just be focused on this. You also need to do this. So think very holistically. I think it's very important when you're doing ABM that you don't get very greedy about it. Like in balance, you have to do it in balance, in harmony with the organization. Usually we are unable to convince our organization because we are not in harmony with what they're trying to do. So I would suggest make it fit within the organizational goals, and then you'll get the alignment.
So I see someone also chatted this, and this is the thing that also stuck out to me. So this is a great way to end the session because I think this is perfect. It has to be immersed and based in customer obsession. I love that definition for what account-based is, right? I mean, it's targeted, but it's got to be the mindset change of you're not selling to these clients. You are literally becoming obsessed with these customers and getting to know them in a deep and true way. So thank you for that. This has been an excellent conversation. I have enjoyed it so much, and I hope that everybody listening was able to get a lot out of this. So thank you so much for your time, Richa.
Thank you, Nicole. I loved it. And thanks to all the audience for the lovely prompts and questions. Have a great session ahead. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.